Welcome back. Over the last few videos, we got started with Azure boards, wherein we saw how you could create work items, stories, how you could manage your boards, and then sprints, backlogs. We created a bunch of features, explored features like the swim lanes, multiple columns, color coding your cards, and a lot of those cool features. I guess it was there in the Agile project. This is where it was. So yeah, if you go to the boards and then just give you a glimpse of what we've done so far, we've got a bunch of stories, and then we've got the board right over here. We color coded our cards as well, as you could see that there are multiple cards with different set of colors and tags as well. We've got multiple swim lanes. We've got different set of columns, and then we created bunch of sprints, and then time box that sprint as well. We created query in our first video as well. So that was about all those cool features and good features we explored, and which could be beneficial, especially when you're managing set of developers or infrastructure or the QAs to make sure that your business goals are delivered to the client. This video is dedicated to Azure Repos, wherein we're going to get started with an Azure repo. What is an Azure repo? So it's just like any version control, be it if you've heard about or worked on, highly likely that if you've worked on some of the uh, uh, version control system, could be GitLab, Bitbucket, GitHub. Azure Repo is pretty much similar to that. It's a version control tool that you could use to manage your code, whether you're a software engineer working in a single team, or you working single-handedly, or working with a bunch of users or team members. You need a version control system to track the changes you have made. As you edit and start building a product, you need some sort of version control to manage your code. The two in Azure DevOps, it is built on top of Git, which is the most commonly used version control today, and quickly becoming the de facto standard for the version control. The one is Git, and other one is Team Foundation version control, which is like centralized version control, which you manage on your own rather than the Git to manage. So that's about how you manage your Team Foundation. So with this module is dedicated to Git, which we're gonna get started and start creating our first repo. So let's go back to our repo. So as you see, we do not have any repo at the moment because it's a fresh new project, and we haven't got any repo underneath it. So what we're gonna do is, first thing first, how do you create a repo in Azure DevOps if you don't have any? You see right over here, it gives you the project name. You click on the drop down and you get bunch of options over here. The first one is the new repo, the second one is import repository, and the manage repository. What we're going to do is we're going to click on the new repo and start creating, give a name to our repo. Could be my first AZ repo. Give it, add a readme. You could add an ignore file as well, and give it a type, what type of ignore file you want to add. I'm going to keep it blank at the moment and hit on create. As soon as you create, it's going to hit on create. It's going to create a branch for you with a readme. There's no file in it. However, you can pull out the repo on your local code editor and start pushing your code. That's what we're going to do. So how do you pull your code? How do you kind of make pull or download it into a local system? So you go to clone and select the type of protocol, whether you want to use HTTPS or SSH. Since I'm working on a Mac OS, I'm going to use the SSH. Hit on the clone copy button, pull out your code editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code Editor. However, if you're using any other IntelliJ or Sublime, whatever you want to use, you could use that as well. I'm using Visual Studio Code because it's one of the tools from Microsoft, and it's open source as well, and you kind of get a bunch of cool features, cool extension. So I've already downloaded an extension. I would urge you to download as well, something called as Azure Repo. Now this gives you some cool features, like it tells you what are the latest changes you have made, who has done what. So feel free to download this extension. and we go to back to our file right over here. And how do we clone is you type in git clone and then the clone and the repo URL which you've copied right from here. You hit enter. As soon as you hit enter, you're going to be prompted with an error. The error is going to be like the public key authentication failed. What does that mean? Your system from where you're trying to clone your Azure repo needs to trust this Azure DevOps, right? Otherwise, anybody can come and clone your repo and start making the changes. Obviously, you don't want that because it's your product, it's your hard work, and you don't want to open sources. Well, you can, but they're highly unlikely all the team or all the companies doesn't work as an open source, and you want to keep your code secure. So how do you do that? You go to your terminal and you export the RSA token. Go to the SSH and there's something called an RSA public key. You pull out that public key and give that to your Azure repo. So if you go over here, you see something called as manage SSH keys. Go to the new key and give it a name Sean Mac and paste in your public key right over here. Now what you've done is you've pasted your public key into Azure repo. Now repo or Azure DevOps will be able to trust your computer. Now if you hit enter, git clone and try to clone the repo, it should be able to clone your repo. You see, it has successfully been able to pull out your repo. And if you go right over here, my first AZ repo with a readme, what we had over there. And if you think your system is compromised or your system is now you've changed your system, you can always go back right over here and remove the SSH key. With that, um, your terminal won't be able to trust Azure repo, and you won't be able to make any changes, pull or push. So let's start making some changes and see how it kind of works in real life scenario. So you've got this file. Consider this as a general readme file which you have in your um, project. So you go right over here and you start making some changes. Integration test to be completed, and then you've got your unit test as well to be completed. Alright, so you've made some changes. If you see over here, you've got alright, so you are not into the repo, so go make sure you are into the repo now. And if you do a git status, you see that there's some changes in the readme, and if you start see that the readme has been modified. How do you see the branches and everything? So the command remains same. Your all your git commands works over here. So if you were to see what are the branches, you could do git branch and see you've only one branch. Had you had many branches, all your branches would have been here. If you want to create a new branch, you could always create git branch and give it a name feature Sean. And if you do a git branch, hey, you see that your new branch is available. However, your head is still pointing to the master branch. Now if you had your git status, you could always add some more comments. With the help of the extension Azure repo, you could see that there are some changes which were made few seconds back, and it kind of tells you that okay, this was made few seconds back. To do items to be completed. Alright, so if you hover your mouse over here, you see that you committed few seconds back. So now if you do a git status, it will tell you that okay, this has got certain changes. If you do a git add, this is going to commit, and you type in your commit message. Now the trick is whenever you commit something, let me just extend a little bit and probably increase the front. That's too much. Yeah, So now if you want to do a commit, what you would do is, if you're working on a story, let's suppose you are working on one of the stories which we have created right over here. You're creating on shut down the server over weekend. So what you could do is, you pick up the story number right from here, you go to your terminal, put a hash over here, type in the story number, and start adding a commit message. This was my first commit message. Hit enter, git push, and it's going to start pushing your changes. If you go back to your repo, click on the repo right over here. If you go to the history, you'll see that the commit has come right over here, and your changes is right over here. That's what we changed, right? And you could always go back to your file and see what are the files. If you want, you could also start editing right over here. Azure DevOps gives you a very rich text editor. If you don't have an editor, or if you don't want to make changes, or you pull your changes, it's a very small change. You want to make sure that you want to do it onto UI itself on the fly. You would come over here, and it gives you a rich syntax highlighting as well. Make sure that the readme is completed, and you simply start can preview as well. You see that your preview gives you a view of how your change is going to look like after the commit. Highlight the changes, going to give you, okay, this one was added, and if something had been deleted, it would have shown you that as well. You do a commit, and you could always again link the work item like we did, maybe some other work item, so that it's kind of, and you hit commit. And now if you go to your work item, go to your boards, that was the work item. On the right hand side, you would see that your commit message is right over here. This was my first commit, and now the commit which we did from our local system is now linked with your story, 23 shutdown servers over the weekend. So now this was committed, and if you click on here, you could see that what were the change which was linked to this story. There was one more story we added. I kind of forgot. What was that? We go to the commit, and never mind. So yeah, this is how you could link your commit message to your Azure work item. Just put a hash and then the story number, and then you would be able to link your stories or work items with your changes. If somebody looks at your changes and he wants to make a comment, he could always come back right over here, this, and mention you as well, aka DevOps Shan. This readme needs to be completed ASAP, and you could start, like, give a header and start attaching work items as well. So you see all the work item has come up now, and if you associate a work item and then start mention a pull request as well, and then comment it, and the committer would be able to see this particular message. If you go to the pushes, you will see that all the pushes we've done, this was the first push, this was my first commit, and then this one that gives you the commit ID, and then branches. At the moment we've got only one branch, that is master. You could adjust the setting right from here. Delete, if you want to delete the repo, you could just delete the branch, and this is going to delete the entire repo. If you want to view the files, you could do that. If you want to view the history, you could do that as well. We're going to go back to the branches, and you could also lock your master branch, which means none of the users would be able to make any changes to this branch, or rather unlock, rather delete this branch. So anybody tries to delete or push any changes to this particular branch, he or she would be start getting an error. You could define the branch policies as well. Now branch policy gives you what's the requirement of a minimum number of reviewers? You've turned it off at the moment. How you could always turn it on and give them, okay, I need at least two members to review my changes, and then only it should be pushed to the master branch. Check for linked work item. You want to check that any particular work item must be associated with the commit, because commit must be associated with the work item. What you're doing for, whom are you working for, which product, which feature. Check for the comment resolution. Make sure that whatever comments you've made, the reviewer has made, it should be resolved, and then only the changes should be pushed. All these are specifically required for the pull request. And limit merge types, and then build validation, status type, and all those features available right over here. You could add the tags as well, and you have a pull request as well, which we haven't made it yet. However, in the future video, we're gonna start creating our own branch and start creating the pull request. That's it for now. I hope this was informative. I'll see you in a while.